Hey there and welcome back to the channel. Today we're rediving into one of the most fascinating and twisted aspects of human psychology, people who literally fake their own deaths to escape their problems. And I'm not talking about some modern insurance scam bullshit. I'm talking about historical figures who pulled off death hoaxes so convincing that they fooled entire civilizations for decades, sometimes centuries. Picture this. You're a powerful ruler, a famous artist, or maybe just someone who's gotten themselves into deep shit, and you realize that the only way out is to literally stop existing. But here's the thing. You don't actually want to die. You just want everyone else to think you're dead so you can start over somewhere else. It sounds like something out of a movie, but trust me, people have been pulling this trick for thousands of years. And some of them were so good at it that we're still not sure if they were actually dead or not. Let me start with one of the most badass fake death stories in history, Nero. The Roman emperor who supposedly fiddled while Rome burned? Now, everyone knows Nero died in 68 CE, right? He supposedly killed himself to avoid being captured and executed by his enemies. But here's where it gets interesting. For decades after his death, people kept claiming to see Nero alive and well, living in hiding and planning his comeback. The official story is that Nero fled Rome when his enemies were closing in, and rather than face the humiliation of capture, he had his secretary stab him in the throat. But here's the thing that should make you suspicious. They never found his body. His supporters claimed they buried him, but no tomb was ever located. For the next 20 years, there were at least 3 major false Nero incidents where guys showed up claiming to be the real emperor, and they were convincing enough that they gathered significant followings. Now, you might think this is just wishful thinking from Nero's supporters. Consider this. Nero was one of the most hated emperors in Roman history, at least according to the upper-class historians who wrote about him. But he was actually pretty popular with the common people, especially in the eastern provinces. If you were going to fake your death and disappear, having loyal supporters in distant territories would be exactly what you'd need. Meet Perkin Warbeck, who in the 1490s convinced half of Europe that he was Richard, Duke of York, one of the famous princes in the Tower who supposedly died in childhood. This guy was so convincing that the King of Scotland gave him military support, and the Holy Roman Emperor recognized him as the rightful King of England. Here's what makes Warbeck's story so fascinating. He claimed that when his brother Edward V was murdered in the Tower of London, he was spared and secretly smuggled out of England. He said he lived in hiding for years before revealing his true identity. And here's the kicker. His story was plausible enough that it terrified Henry VII, who spent massive resources trying to discredit and capture him. Warbeck's physical appearance matched descriptions of the young prince. He knew details about the royal court that only an insider would know, and he spoke with what people described as a royal bearing. Was he really the prince who faked his death to escape assassination? Or was he just an incredibly talented con artist? We'll never know for sure, but he kept the charade going for almost a decade before finally being captured and executed. Now, let me tell you about the psychology behind faking your own death. Because this isn't just about escaping problems, it's about the ultimate reinvention. When you fake your death, you're not just running away, you're becoming someone completely new. You're erasing every mistake, every enemy, every obligation that tied down your old life. It's the most extreme form of starting over that's humanly possible. But here's the thing about fake deaths. They require incredible planning, resources, and most importantly, people willing to help you disappear. You can't just vanish on your own. You need confederates who will lie about seeing your body, forge documents, spread false stories, and keep your secret even under torture. This means that successful fake deaths were usually only possible for people with money, power, and loyal followers. Let me give you an example of how complex these operations could be. Take the case of Dmitri, the son of Ivan the Terrible, who supposedly died in 1591 at age 9. The official story was that he accidentally stabbed himself during an epileptic seizure while playing with a knife. But in 1605, a man showed up claiming to be Dmitri, saying that loyal boyars had saved him from assassins and raised him in secret. This false Dmitri was so convincing that he actually became Tsar of Russia for about a year. He knew intimate details about the royal family. He was recognized by Dmitri's mother, and he successfully challenged the legitimacy of Boris Godunov's rule. Even after he was killed in 1606, 2 more false Dmitris appeared, each claiming to be the real prince who had faked his death. What's really mind-blowing about these cases is how they reveal the power of identity in the pre-modern world. Without photographs, fingerprints, or DNA testing, proving who you were came down to who recognized you and what you could remember. If you could convince enough people that you were someone who was supposed to be dead, you could literally resurrect yourself into power. But faking your death wasn't just for royalty and politicians. Artists, writers, and intellectuals did it too, often for completely different reasons. Some wanted to escape debt or scandal. Others wanted to see how they'd be remembered after death. And a few just got tired of their lives and wanted to start over somewhere else. The Japanese have a concept called evaporation. When someone deliberately disappears from their life without explanation, it's actually so common in modern Japan that there are private investigators who specialize in finding evaporated people. But this isn't a new phenomenon. People have been deliberately vanishing throughout history, and faking death was often the most effective way to do it. Here's what is really fascinating about historical fake deaths. They often succeeded because people wanted to believe them. When a hated ruler died, their enemies were happy to accept it without too much investigation. When a beloved figure died, their supporters were eager to believe stories about their survival. The psychological needs of the audience often mattered more than the actual evidence. But let me tell you about the risks involved in faking your own death. Because this wasn't some consequence-free escape plan. If you got caught, you weren't just facing the original problems you were trying to escape. You were facing charges of fraud, conspiracy, and often treason. The punishment for faking your death as a royal or noble was usually actual death, often in the most brutal way possible. The logistics were incredibly complex too. You had to arrange for a body that could pass for yours, coordinate with multiple accomplices, establish a new identity, and somehow support yourself in your new life without accessing any of your old resources. One mistake, one betrayal, one person recognizing you in your new life, and the whole scheme could collapse. In our next part, we'll dive into some of the most successful and outrageous fake death schemes in history. People who managed to fool entire nations and live secret lives for years or even decades. Trust me, these stories will make you question everything you think you know about historical facts.